Can anybody really crack the Gen Z code? Like, is there a code, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. And can you crack it? That's a conversation we're going to have next with somebody who's written an entire book around it. But first, let's give you the news fix for this hour as we get into the final hour. Fixing the Nation, a conversation at a time. A cockpit recording of dialogue between the two pilots of the Air India flight that crashed last month supports the view that the captain cut the flow of fuel to the plane's engines, according to a source briefed on U.S. officials' early assessment of evidence. The first officer was at the controls of the Boeing 787 and asked the captain why he moved the fuel switches into a position that starved the engines of fuel and requested that he restore the fuel flow. This is what the source told Reuters on condition of anonymity because the matter remains under investigation. Air India CEO noted preliminary reports found no mechanical or maintenance faults. This one is one of those that you really want to wait for that investigation report to come out and then start looking back. I'm sure they're looking back into the flight crew and what they were doing before this, how are they, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, to get comprehensive answers.
Yes.
Another story we're following for you. Trump has been diagnosed with a vein condition causing leg swelling. The White House said on Thursday that the U.S. president is experiencing swelling in his lower legs and bruising on his right hand after photographs emerged of Trump with swollen ankles and makeup covering the afflicted part of his hand. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt, reading a letter from Trump's doctor at a press briefing, said both ailments were benign. His leg swelling is from a, quote, common vein condition, and his hand is bruised from shaking so many hands. Okay.
Yeah. Just, yeah.
Must have been those Africans last week.
Wow, Eric.
Sometimes the intrusive thoughts don't have to.
Oh, did I say that out? Oh, oops.
The ones who had good English.
Those ones. Thoughts win. 9 times out of 10, he lets the intrusive thoughts win. Oh man, thank you so much for
Have
joining
you seen
us.
any other president lately with swollen legs?
With swollen legs?
Yeah, I think so.
Swollen lower parts of the legs, ankles, and so on and so forth. Anyway, Ati, what's on next?
Mariam was transitioning us.
No. I've also caught on to what he's saying.
Okay.
Well, our last conversation for the day, actually, we are with the author of Cracking the Gen Z Code. Her name is Funmi Akinyemi. And of course, we'll be discussing why Gen Z think the way they do, how to adapt in the work sector, in social settings, economically, all through. And of course, we'll be getting to know what inspired her to write this book. It's a big pleasure to welcome Funmi to studio. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here.
It's very nice to have you. Just before we get into anything else, Janet has a quote for you. She'll give it to you, and then maybe you can tell us your interpretation and your cool. Actually, that's it, interpretation of it.
Of the quote, yes. Today it's by Nelson Mandela because it's Mandela Day. It's his birthday, July 18th. And in 1994, during an interview with the Time magazine, when they were praising him and telling him he's just this saintly figure, he said, "I'm not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." What do you make of that?
I absolutely love that. I think it's just giving grace to the moments where we're not our best selves, but it's not that we're intentionally trying to be that. And so I think it's just, honestly, for me, it just feels like giving grace to who we are. We're not perfect, but that imperfection is what makes it so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. And as long as the intentions are good,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
That's why she's an author.
That's why she's an author.
For me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just read. Gen Z are rewriting the rules of work, of influence, and of how brands connect with their audiences. In Cracking the Gen Z Code, Funmi Akinyemi unpacks the mindsets, behaviors, and values driving this generation, offering businesses, marketers, and leaders the ultimate playbook for engaging with Gen Z authentically. From viral trends to shifting workplace dynamics, the book reveals what it truly takes to win with a generation that's shaping the future. Are you Gen Z?
Yes, I am, of course.
So have you studied Gen Z?
Have you studied?
Have you studied who you are?
Have you studied who you are?
Daily.
Yeah.
This is your life.
This is my life.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What made you write this book?
I'm one person who, from a really young age, I would say, I kind of was pushed into having to lead, having to take initiative. At 19, I was running a program in the slum areas to just give young women who had a passion about makeup the opportunity to learn and to grow because they couldn't get the resources that they would normally need. Mm-hmm. And so I've always found myself in these scenarios where I'm working with people older than myself, mm-hmm. Being led by people older than myself, but also leading people where I'm the youngest leading in the pack. Mm-hmm. So I've just seen so much, and from my different experiences, even in the corporate world, I just feel like there was just a lot of things that I felt, it's just an understanding gap here. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to fill that gap. And I felt like this is my way of like writing a love note to the corporate world and just saying something that could be hard to articulate in a way that makes sense for other generations.
I want to get into the book soon, but I'm also curious from you. First of all, I think before there's always been these misconceptions about every generation, but let's talk about Gen Z, how they work, etc. And then the world has seen the shift, right? Yeah. Starting, for example, Kenya last year, that Gen Z can lead, Gen Z are leaders, etc. But what do you think the world still gets wrong? Like we've seen the audacity, we've seen the smarts, we've seen the abilities, and yet, what else do we still? Where do we still kind of like underestimate Gen Z?
I think sometimes, and it's a whole chapter in this book, I talk about there's just some terms that are misused. So, for example, it's very common to hear that, Gen Zs are so entitled. Mm-hmm. But if you really look at it, as a Gen Z speaking, I will tell you, we just stand up for what is right and we push for what we want to see. Whether that means change in an industry, in a nation, in the workplace, we will always try to strive to make things better. And there's just all these terms like we're lazy, just because we'll like find the quickest tools to do things. We don't want to waste 10 hours on a 1-hour task. If AI can help us, we're going to use it. So it's then looked at as, you're so lazy. But actually, we're making the most of the resources that we have. We're not afraid to try new things. We're not stuck in old ways of thinking and operating. And so I think, honestly, it's really just a lot of terms that are twisted to give a negative connotation, which is not actually the truth.
Right? Yeah, you're efficient, essentially. Yes. But I'm asking her that because I'm like, but we've seen, it's not to say, blanket, everybody has this power and wit. Yeah. But I'm like, the world has seen what young people can bring to the table. I just wonder why there's still a condemnation. That's where I was coming from. I'm like, but you've seen.
Yeah. I think it's, I don't know, this is my view of it. There's always generational friction. It happens every generation to the next one. This is just more pronounced because, of course, we live in now the time of social media and it's like it's in your face. And I think there's also a certain assertiveness that previous generations didn't have with regards to doing things how they want. So there's always that initial push from every generation, and then you kind of just get into things, and there's a little bit of change that happens when the friction happens, and then now that becomes a new way of doing things. With, I think, Gen Z, it's almost an overhaul. It's not friction and a little bit of change, it's almost like an entirely new way. But that's just my thoughts. I wanted to ask Funmi, before we get into anything else, when we say cracking the Gen Z code, Gen Z across the world are incredibly different, right? So how do we then crack the code on people who are incredibly different, even if they do belong to the same to the same generation?
I think, again, this is the first chapter, so I actually break down what made us the way we are. So as much as we are spread across the world and like live different lives, we've grown up in a world that is fairly similar. It's the digital age. Everything is very fast paced. We've grown up in an age of speaking up, of emotional awareness. So there's just a lot of key things that have happened. We've seen inclusivity and the power of that, seen the first Black US president. Like so much has happened from when we were born. And so these events, honestly, I believe shape how we think. Whether you're in Kenya, whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in the US, I have Gen Z friends all over, and it feels like we're like separated siblings because as much as we're not together and we might not be in the same home raised the same way. We are, one, raised by the same generation of parents in most cases, and two, in a world where all these things are happening simultaneously. Yeah.
True. And there's a lot to unpack, especially for all that's happening simultaneously. Again, every generation thinks to themselves, wow, there's so much happening. But I do genuinely think right now there is so much happening, but more so an awareness of all the things that are happening. Just to get into the differences, the why for the differences in especially work culture. Let me start from there. Again, the lazy and entitled comments. Yeah, I've even done a whole segment called Miss Me With That. Like, what was my Miss Me With That? Gen Z are entitled, lazy. Yeah, Miss Me With That. I said Miss Me With That. But where do you think this misconception comes from? And when you try to think objectively, do you think there's any basis for it, for the entitled and lazy comments? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I definitely feel like with any assumption or with any concept, there's always the minority. There's where it's very prominent or where it's not. And when it comes to, for example, being lazy, I do know that there are Gen Zs who they just really couldn't care. Like, bro, I'm not gonna stress myself.
Yeah.
And then there's
as they are with every generation.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think there's always like different sides to this. And when it comes to like being lazy, like I said, sometimes you're just looking at the fact that you always want to do things really fast in such a quick way. You don't want to do it the way it's always been done. We really just don't believe in that. And so I think the way we push for what we want in those scenarios where things have always been done a certain way and we are now the minority that are like, no, we don't want to do that. That is where that comes from. When it comes to even something like being sensitive, I hear so often that, oh my gosh, Gen Zs are so overly sensitive. And I think we're just emotionally aware and we're not afraid to show our emotions. And that's honestly a powerful thing. It's a strength. It's not that it should be a problem for a guy to get emotional and cry or speak on something that's making someone feel emotional. I think emotional awareness is a strength. And unfortunately with Gen Zs, I feel like it's seen as overly sensitive, and so it's a negative thing.
Are there some genuine negatives?
Definitely.
Like what?
I would say, I mean, even speaking of emotional awareness, I think sometimes things can get pushed over the fence, and also it depends on different individuals. Like, we're all different. Some people will be opportunists and find ways to use those emotionally aware moments to manipulate or control. But I think you just always have to see that we're not all like that. And with every generation, I think that's at the core of all this. With every generation, with every group of people, there will always be the 70%, the 30%, and it's going to always vary in some way.
True. It's figuring out, which is which. And speaking of figuring things out, I think of the workplace and the changes that have happened since COVID. People were opened up to the idea of, hey, you can work from home. You don't, and then we started to interrogate, why do we, do these 8 to 5 hours, or why are workplaces set up like this, like that? And then we kind of just backtracked once the world opened up again, right? And I think part of that is because the real estate market was suffering. But I do try to find middle ground, because I sit somewhere I can see the logic of, if I can do it in 1 hour, why do I need to be here for 8, right? And I do get that. But I'm also very aware of the fact that there's a certain amount of work that needs to be put in to get to places that you want. How do you marry those two things for people who, a generation that people think is only after if I can do it in 1 hour, why would I do it with 8 or 10?
Microwave solutions.
Microwave solutions. How do you marry those two realities?
I think what I would say is, at the end of the day, we're not saying choose the quantity of time over the quality. So quality always has to come first. At the end of the day, are we saying, okay, you're going to use a microwave solution, but it's not going to be the same quality, or it's not going to be as good as it could have been if you did it the longer way? So what I believe is, let's focus on the quality. If you can achieve the highest quality in that 1 hour, then 100% go for it. But if there's going to be compromise to the quality or the output, then you have to actually look inward and be like, is this then worth it? I think of how I finished university online, and the whole world, it was interesting because like half of the world is like struggling, like, oh my gosh, like I'm just indoors. And I am one of those people who was having the time of my life.
thriving.
Yeah. I loved my online classes. I loved being able to like chop my onions as I'm listening to the lecturer.
Yes.
Like just being able to multitask and get so many tasks done at the same time because of that flexibility. So even transitioning into the workplace, it was really difficult for me when I had my first experience of like, we need you in office 8 to 5 days a week. Like that for me was really, really tough. And so it just takes also adapting. But I think at the core of it all, just focusing on the quality. If I'm working from home, if I'm working from the office, will the quality of my work be the same? Or am I going to then compromise or
Slack off.
sacrifice? Exactly. So
Did you graduate online? Because I feel like that's a robbery for some. I think there's people who, like who didn't get the chance to do everything. Did you feel like it was you were robbed of your graduation?
thankfully, when the world has opened back up is when my graduation happened.
Okay.
So like I did like 1.5 years online and then had a physical graduation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
At least.
At least. You always point out the word at least. I'm wondering where somebody has cracked the Gen Z code, where you're like, this platform or this person gets us.
Yeah.
Has there been that moment?
I think recently one of my new hobbies is vibe coding, and that is something like I could have never imagined myself as a coder in my life, but that is one area that I was like, whoever thought of this concept is a freaking genius, because now I don't have to know code, but I can prompt and the code will then generate an actual working platform for me. And so for me, that is one area. I know, just look it up. You have to look that one up.
Vibe coding.
Yeah, vibe coding.
Please
So you
explain
don't.
it from scratch.
So you know how you tell ChatGPT like
For the Gen Zs who don't know.
you can tell ChatGPT, give me a caption for XYZ. Now with vibe coding, you can tell it, I need a platform or a website that does A, B, C. I want these features, and it will build you the code, but also build you the platform. So I think that's one area where it's like, you don't actually need to have 100% of this core skill,
Right.
but you're able to make so much progress just with like prompting knowledge and being able to, in some sense, prompt engineer. So that is one area that I know it sounds very nerdy, but I think that is one of the coolest things in the
It's
world.
very cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So here's I worry about sometimes the microwave solution bit of it being that before to code you had to know your zeros and ones, and you had to do extensive work to be able to build this platform. So I wonder what it takes away when then you're able to do it via prompt. And I know that's what people said when the calculator came out. They were just like, why would you do this? You won't be able to do math, you know?
Even the logbook.
Yeah. Oh God. I can't believe someone thought of the logbook as like, this is an advance. Okay. But you get where I'm going with this,
yeah,
right?
I get where you're going.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, even from my journey of like playing around with that, I don't think it can replace a coder, to be very honest. I've had so many roadblocks where like the code fails and you realize you need a human being to actually look through and find the solution. So I feel like, yes, there's all these things to help us, but there's always that space for the skilled people to actually come and fine tune. Even when I think of like how people think ChatGPT can replace copywriters, I absolutely do not agree.
Oh no.
Because
oh no.
you don't want to sound like a robot, and that's a whole world. I don't want to get into that, but I just feel like there's always going to be space for certain skills, creative skills that need to come into play, regardless of all the tools available to us at the moment. Yeah.
Is there something that you feel Gen Z need to continue to carry forward with? Let me try and contextualize. I don't even know if this will add up. When I witness different Gen Z, I see people who are almost rooting themselves back to tradition. It's very interesting, very fascinating. Whatever it is, whether it's, and I could be using the wrong word, so let me just say, if it's crocheting, if it's cooking, like there's such a love and passion for grounding and communal healing. Then you have others who now push back on those ones, and they're like, you're trad, what are you doing? So there's a duality of life, right? But what do you think needs to be carried forward generationally? What do you think Gen Z need to root themselves back in across the board that you feel can continue to propel a sustained quality of life that maybe they're just dismissing and saying we don't do that anymore?
I would say I think mental health awareness is a big one there. I feel like Gen Zs are a generation that are very aware of how things make them feel. And it's such a big thing for Gen Zs. Unfortunately, even in my social circles, I've lost friends to suicide. And thinking about that, it's so painful because it's like the pressures of life that they were dealing with, if they were in an environment where emotional awareness and that mental health awareness was such a big thing, maybe they would not have gotten to that point. And I think of it even in the workplace when it comes to like Gen Zs who are just like, if it costs me my mental health, it's too expensive. And I truly believe in that. And I feel like that is something Gen Zs need to carry forward. We're in such a twisted world. And if your heart is not guarded, I feel like it's just the source of so many evils and pains, and it's really difficult to see that. So I think one thing that I would want and hope that every Gen Z stays rooted in is just being very emotionally aware. If it's costing you your mental health, if it's costing you your peace, I don't think it's a bad thing to step away.
Being able to hear themselves, like don't lose the ability.
Exactly.
With all the noise going on,
Yeah.
don't lose the ability. I also think Gen Z are aware that a lot of mental health issues may also come from societal injustice.
Yes.
Would you agree? I think that's why there's such an agitation for change. Like access to justice is linked directly to my ability to have access to quality of life. Would you say that's also something that a lot of young people are aware of?
I think so. Definitely is. Like even with what's happened in Kenya, it's been a tough one for a lot of Gen Zs. I will tell you, like we'll be on the streets together and you get home, you're alive and you're well. And there's this, I know a lot of people probably feel it, but when you get home and you see that your peers were killed, it's one of the most painful things, and it sticks with you. And I feel like that is also why we're so pushy on change, because we know that change gives gateway for feeling safe, feeling like you're in a world that you're protected in. Nobody wants to wake up feeling like this could be my last day for standing up for what's right. So I think there's just a lot of things there, but yeah, I do think it does play a big role. Yeah.
Funmi, do you think Gen Z are different from millennials?
I would say there's a lot of similarities there. I would say a lot of similarities. Millennials were kind of born while all these innovations were being thought of and like slowly introduced. But for Gen Zs, like a lot of us grew up with fingerprint and like face IDs. We grew up with tablets and with all these things that became the normal for us. Like we've also grown up in a global village. So like for us, it's normal to have friends that you've never met. You probably play Fortnite and you're friends and you'll bond over that. And I think that's one area where I feel like Gen Zs are a bit different, because
relationships had pen pals. They would write someone in China.
A millennial will have their notebook probably. A Gen Z will be like, I have my phone, I'll just type it out. But I do feel like there's a lot of similarities there. We've both grown up in worlds where, in terms of tech and innovation, a lot was going on. So yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities.
Is there a rivalry between Gen Z and millennials?
A rivalry.
I feel like there's a collaboration, but yes, let's see.
I don't think there's a rivalry. I will say, like, having millennial bosses feels a lot easier, I would say, than having like any other generation above that. So I feel like in terms of understanding, they're probably like in a space where they can relate a lot more. I have millennial colleagues who, honestly, I find them really cool. I'm like, you're actually living the life. You're a really cool person. And so I feel like there's also a lot to learn from them. They are more, in terms of even like when I look at leadership, when I look at the more serious, they're like almost very, very, very serious Gen Zs, I would say. Where there's like a balance with fun, but also like, let me take my pen and paper and take some notes. So yeah.
I think it's a factor of time.
Why did you ask that about the rivalry?
Because I've heard in some quarters you hear when the Gen Z are talking, they're like, these millennials, they are not pushers. The millennials just go with the flow and so on and so forth. And whereas we Gen Z, we know what we want and we're going for it. I've heard that. Have you heard that?
I would say in terms of even like the little things, like I can't tell you the number of times the millennial will come to me and be like, hey, like, how do you do this on Instagram? I'm like, just look it up. Like, it's not that deep. So I think
apply yourself.
So I think there's those little things that I'm like, a millennial will probably come and be like, hey, like, how do you put like a picture as your background on your IG story? And even if I don't know it, I'm probably going to look it up and figure it out. But I always find it interesting how millennials want you to like show them, like physically, like show me how to do it, while a Gen Z would even go to TikTok and like check it out and do it. So I think that's a very interesting thing I've noticed.
Right.
I'm sure the older generations would say different things about millennial.
Yeah.
You know, and we've had that. We had that conversation.
Yes, we did.
The baby boomers and the older Gen Xers look at millennials as these people who are all those words that you've said. Lazy, they just don't want to work, or you know, they don't want to put in the work, and so on and so forth.
And their version of "Can you show me on IG?" is how do I turn this PDF into a Word document?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry, Jano, have I triggered you?
No. I believe I'm millennial.
You're a millennial.
Check.
You are. Okay. Why?
I don't know. I'll have a conversation with myself as to what I do. But yes, you picked something. I'm like, that was me. Not too long ago.
But also, from the older generations, the millennials and their approach to life and all was something that was actually, you see, these kind of books and reports and all, they came out. Marketing material and brochures, understanding the millennial. Because the millennial is the current consumer, is the current shopper, and is how they're thinking. They will, go and search for information. They will go to Google and search for information. They'll not just come and buy things because you put them up on a shop and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
There was that. And then those, let's say the baby boomers, they look at millennial and Gen Z, they say, it's those people who are just too noisy.
Same.
Same WhatsApp. And that's why I asked, do you see a difference between those generations that are close to each other? Are you seeing a difference between Gen Zs and the Alphas?
That's very interesting. But I think one thing I will say is nothing is ever going to be the same. I think for every generation, there's going to be some version of a book like this that probably has very similar themes. And I think it all stems from the fact that, like, you've grown up in such a different world, and this is now a human being that you're seeing live a life that is 20 steps ahead of what you were living. And so it's never bound to be the same. I think it will always change. With Gen Alpha and Gen Z, I do feel we're about to become the next, like, grouped up together cluster, because in very many ways, like, I look at my baby nephew, for example, he's grown up in the world of ChatGPT. And in my world, I can't imagine if I had that in school, but he's going to have AI in school. And so I think it's going to keep progressing. Like, life is going to keep moving. Every generation is going to find the other one a little bit like an alien in some way or another.
Should we change the span of generations?
In what sense?
Because things are happening so fast. We just shorten and say, so after Alpha, it's betas.
It's beta, yeah.
5 years.
That's quite short.
And then we're going to C. Things are happening that fast, Mariam. Like you see.
But I don't think it's just pace. I think it's a grasp of, I don't know,
there's
like
all
a lived
that.
experience.
The circumstances under which the older millennial grew up in and Mariam grew up in are different.
That's true.
The circumstances under which the older Gen Z is growing up in and the younger Gen Z are different. Now you can imagine the alphas.
And then the betas,
And then you give them that whole span of, 15 years. 50, what?
And by that, you shorten it. I don't know where people make that application or how scientifically it's defined. Before I lose my question, I don't know whether it's similar to either what Mariam or Eric asked, but I want to speak to authority and leadership. And also trying to understand where Gen Z feel like the combination of extending grace while also pushing back. So authority and leadership has come up a lot. Like, you do not get to talk to me that way. You don't get to set rules this way. And these are people who've only known to do things a certain way. On the plus side, it's boundaries, right? Some might argue on the other side, it's rude, it's a disrespect of authority. So how do you define what healthy authority looks like? And how do you also find room in you to extend grace, to give things a chance, but also saying, nope, here I'm putting a boundary?
I think a big word I would throw in here is accountability. So on both sides, I have to be accountable to myself and also to my leader. I cannot join an organization that has a culture and a mission they're working towards and then feel like, you know what, because I'm here, change it all right now. So I think unfortunately, it's also one of those spaces where you have to find your place. There, you can't say that you want to work at a certain company and then go in and be like, this culture is not what I expected. So like, you also have to be adaptable and be accountable. And when it comes to leadership, I will say, I think Gen Z's, one area we struggle is micromanaging. I think I'd never met a Gen Z that is able to just cope through micromanagement. It drives us crazy. Because I'm like, okay, I'm young, but I'm not a child. And micromanagement, and then also feeling like you can talk to us anyhow because of your position. I think we're definitely a generation where mutual respect is a big thing. So not that I'm saying, you know, you have to bow down to me and you're my boss, but there has to be a mutual respect there. Like, you cannot talk to me a certain way, be passive aggressive, condescending, because you are my boss. And so I think there has to be two-way accountability and respect, where even as a leader, yes, you hold them accountable, but you also need to hold yourself accountable. What are you doing that is a trigger? What are you doing that you know you don't have to do, and you can see that it's making life difficult for these people, but you continue to do it? So I would say just two-way accountability and two-way respect, but also just understanding that as much as we are who we are, certain organizations are going to be who they are. And we might feel like this could be better, but there's always boundaries to what we can change and what we can't change. And if it's an area where, you know, if you can't change it or do anything about it, then to be honest, like, that's probably a space where find a better suit for you.
Are you hoping does the book address that as
Yes,
well?
it does.
Workplace. And you're hoping perhaps workplaces can use it as a tool to say, this is how we could approach work differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one thing you've mentioned that I struggle with especially is that notion of, I went through it, so you have to go through it too. And again, we've spoken about it on the show. What are those things that you see, and this is my biggest issue perhaps with millennials and every generation before, as a millennial who's just like on the precipice, I'm like, why do I have to go through exactly what you went through? Are there those things that you're like, we could use an enabling environment, but instead you're trying to just replicate history and kind of have the same thing happen over and over again?
I would say when it comes to climbing the corporate ladder, that is definitely something I've seen where it's almost like you have to fight to prove your worth. And like, for me to get to my level, I had to go through A, B, C, D, E. And yes, you might be skilled. Yes, you might know all this, but you have to go through what I went through to get there. And I feel like a lot of that is just like not letting go of your past traumas. Like, you need to heal, because a lot of the things that you're trying to make people suffer through, it's really just a reflection of what you have not gotten over.
Not healed from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I read somewhere that a child's first bully is an unhealed parent. And let me tell you, you sit with yourself and you're like, I don't know.
Some reflection is needed.
Let me tell you, there's an aversion to healing. I think because it was not mainstreamed, it was seen as weak. If you're going for therapy, there's something wrong with you. And sometimes I think millennials, maybe why we can get along, I know that there's differences but similarities, is because it's listening and seeing, they keep talking about wellness and pouring into myself. There's still an adaptability to say, it's not too late for me. I'm not in my 70s or 80s, I can. But definitely healing. That's, the megaphone is needed for generations ahead.
And I think all of us will, you know, they say you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Those are, So it's how much can you hold out? How much of your thinking can you fight against? Because when change gets harder with time.
Yes.
So then how long do you catch yourself and be like, why am I resisting this?
But maybe change doesn't get, I think that's also a mindset. Because there's a time I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't change. This is too much. Then life forces you to change. But I think it's because, you hear things like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can't change as you're older. And I think that's also a way of keeping you broken. You know what I mean? So you have to also catch yourself and say, now if I just sit here and say, I'm an old dog, I can't learn new tricks, then all you're doing is spewing your trauma. Right? Somebody's like, can you go heal?
That's fair.
I wanted to find out from you, what was your favorite chapter to write and why?
That's a very hard question to answer. But I would probably say the chapter where I spoke about mastering upwards. And basically what I was talking about in that chapter is how to deal with your manager, but also as a manager who is leading Gen Z, what are the things you can do to make life easier? Because I felt like that specific chapter in the workplace, I feel like if some past leaders that I've had read that, maybe my life would have been easier. So that was a chapter that I really wrote with so much heart. It's like, please don't do this. And I think that's probably my favorite chapter. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a teachable moment.
Yeah.
And there's lots of them in the book. I can't wait to read it and maybe even come back for a part 2. But when you think of the lessons that you'll carry, because at the end of the day, Gen Alpha will come into the workforce and then it'll be like, okay, Gen Z have to learn and adapt. And then Gen Beta will come into the workforce and Gen Alpha will have to adapt. But what are those things that you think carry through generation to generation, regardless of AI, tech, anything else? Yeah.
I think that's just the basics of etiquette in the corporate world. Time management. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but people who can't keep time, that is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Like that is a huge red flag. Like be who you are, but keep time, you know? And so I think there's basics like that, like keeping time, respect, emotional intelligence, I feel is such a key one. I see sometimes where people in the workplace, like they can tell someone is in a tough spot, but you don't want to give grace. You don't want to try and understand and have the emotional intelligence to work through certain situations. I feel like a lot of conflict in the workplace, especially across generations, is just because of a lack of emotional intelligence. So I feel like those are probably the top things that I would say should definitely stick.
A lack of empathy.
A lack of
Yes, lack of empathy.
Because again, it's viewed as weak. Anything that's soft skills, we were just lied to.
Right?
It's like you have to be, which there's a combination. But then again, COVID shifted things in terms of global leadership. We saw that leaders who extended empathy, people began to see,
they're doing much better.
They're doing much better.
New Zealand has 0 cases? Wow.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Male Gen Z, female Gen Z, trying to think through what you think people get wrong about now from a gender perspective and how maybe other generations can hold space or just understand better.
I would say with Gen Zs, especially with now male Gen Zs, I feel like they're definitely, and it's really beautiful to watch, but very in tune with their emotions. And I think that is not something that, even with my like millennial brother, who is, he's very close to Gen Zs, but I feel like with him, I've not seen as much emotion as compared to like my Gen Z brother. And I think there's definitely something there where Gen Z males are actually a lot more in tune with emotions. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. With females, I think there's a lot of things that we're not as gentle Mary, you know, we fight for what we want, and we're a generation of very strong women that want what is right to be done. We will fight for the right thing, we will push for the right thing. I mean, I wrote this book because I felt like there was just so much that I wanted to do something about it in the corporate world. And I feel like with Gen Z females, we might come across as probably a little more aggressive because we're really pushy. And with the men, I would say there's just a lot of beautiful emotional vulnerability that I see with them.
Can I give you some?
Can I ruffle some feathers here?
Just before that, can I just give a little bit of perspective?
Okay.
Just a little perspective.
Okay.
And this is I'll say this. You might think that I think Gen Z women come across as more aggressive. I think definitely go-getters, but I will say there's a lot more genuineness and ease of operation than with millennials. And it's of course a factor of time that workplaces have a lot more women and all of that. But I think there's even like a lot more femininity. With a lot of millennials, it was, I have to break the glass ceiling, I have to be tough, I have to be man. And it's like with Gen Z women, it's kind of not as bad. So I will say, while it might feel aggressive it's not as bad.
Exactly.
Could be worse. And I think it's good to be able to be yourself, to understand I can be feminine, I can be in the workspace, I can have hobbies, I can have a life, I can be multiple things. But go on, ruffle away.
It's on the definition of emotion. When you talk about expressing emotion, what comes to mind? Is it expressing sadness? Is emotion just the negative, the sadness and all. Because when you hear, you know, men don't express their emotion, especially now this Gen Z or the millennial men don't express emotion. Are you saying that we don't even know when they're happy? Just because we don't know when they're sad?
I would say it's more to do
when
with...
you talk about the girls, we're saying now the girls are expressing their, you know, because we can tell when they're going and they're going hard, that's how they're expressing emotion.
No.
Right?
Tone down.
I'm ruffling the feathers here in this definition.
Yeah.
Because it appears, just from listening to you, that now, at least the men can now cry. The men can now do this. That's a very good thing. We're not talking about the men are also expressing themselves when they're happy. We're not actually amplifying the fact that when they're happy, they're also... But when...
It's not just about sadness. It's about being vulnerable and not being afraid to show emotion. I think that is probably the core. Like, there's men who will be extremely happy and will be jumping around like puppies, and there's others that will just, you know, I'm cool, calm, and collected. But I think when I talk about expressing emotion, it's just being vulnerable and not being afraid of how that emotion being seen is going to be perceived.
I see.
Yeah.
And then the same men express aggression. How is that taken? When they're showing go-getter, when they're showing the same kind of aggression though, as we are defining in the Gen Z women.
Yeah.
How is that taken?
I mean, be aggressive, but be respectful, and do not let that aggression harm anyone emotionally, physically, in any way.
And that's across the board.
Yeah,
men
that's
and
across
women.
the board.
Yeah.
So you can be your aggressive go-getter self, but it must not harm anyone in any way whatsoever, even emotionally. Yeah.
I want to read an excerpt from the book. What drives us as Gen Z? One thing about us is that we don't just work for financial stability. We're also about meaningful, purpose-driven work, and we refuse to settle for less. And that's why some may call us petty for quitting high-paying jobs that drain us emotionally or pull us away from what we love. But for us, it's not pettiness, it's self-preservation. Work has to be about more than just money. It's about happiness, peace, and the sense of fulfillment. And then you say to employers or leaders of Gen Z, here's some advice. Don't think money alone will keep us. We need peace, flexibility, and the freedom to be ourselves. Often, we will take lower pay if it means we get better work-life balance and an environment that supports who we are. I have read and understood everything. This last one, often we will take lower pay if it means we get a better work-life balance. I have not seen that.
Oh, I am a living example of that. And I will actually just I give that story here, but just to give like a summary, I was working in a very traditional environment. And when I was going to leave, it's like they freaked out, like, oh my gosh, don't go. And I was offered a 6-figure salary, like everything I wanted. I was offered flexibility to work from home and have like that hybrid arrangement. But it was not my space, and I knew that this is not a place where I'm happy. Like, yes, I might do the work well, but think of it from just a peace perspective. Am I happy to wake up to come here every day? And I took a lower paying job and I left because I was like, I would rather be able to spend time with family, to travel, to have peace of mind, and to wake up to go do something that I actually enjoy doing. And so that is, it's definitely something that happens where you choose peace over pressure. Because, you can give me all the money, but like, I'm now having to pay for therapy. You're taking it all.
You're going to ask,
It's
have
a bit
I
too much.
chosen peace over pressure?
No. Have you employed a Gen Z who has come to your organization choosing peace over... They are coming from a high-paying job to a lower-paying job, or has an employee left your organization, gone to a lower-paying job? I mean, I'm asking.
I've had both. I've had somebody join who was paid higher, and then because now I had to learn that different generations work differently, so we worked together for a while. It wasn't quite working out. That when we came back together, we had a very honest conversation about boundaries, about expectations, and honestly, we were good. Then there was another one who, when there was a season of pressure, they were like, and they didn't say, I can't take the pressure. They said, I'm not in a headspace right now in my life where I can handle. I know the organization needs this right now, but I can't. So I've had both scenarios. And I think it's valid. I'm like, if somebody's not in the headspace, does it hurt? Did you need the person? Yeah. But they were just not in the headspace. But I had to learn and unlearn so much over the last 5 years. Because I think there's times I do that thing where you call somebody at night. Where is this? And one of them was like, excuse you.
Pardon?
You don't get to call me at night. And I was like, excuse you. You don't get to tell me when to call you. 5 years later, over time.
You missed the deadline.
You missed a deadline.
And don't you get the point?
And then the next day, their sister now came for me. They were like, why would you call? She's also triggered by ABCD. So I had to do a lot of stock taking to be like, oh, you're projecting, you're doing this and that, to where you're like, okay, let's not give a disclaimer. Can we speak so that you do 1, 2, 3? Or we're having a busy weekend. But I had to check myself because I was checked also.
Right. That's so interesting. I'll just look at the phone ring. That's
no. Like, is anyone dying? Is the answer no? We'll talk on Monday.
Am I a doctor? No. But I wanted to.
You've not experienced that about the person leaving.
No, I've seen that.
But where are you struggling to? What are you grappling with?
It's especially coming from higher pay to lower pay deliberately that I haven't seen very many cases where, you know, the conversation is about I will take lower pay and I will stay here longer. It could be I will take lower pay, but I'm bridging.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that bridging is not communicated to the employer, the new employer. So you sit there and then one time, the guy has come to the end of the bridge, leaving.
Bye.
You're like, I thought we were
like,
good.
I thought we had
something. Is it
something.
more money? No, they start having that conversation with you. I mean, is it more money? Is it more time? Let's
It's peace. It's a pause.
It's peace, I
think Gen Z are big on pause. Like right now, I'm overwhelmed. I'm inundated. I'd rather even not have much to do for 6 months for self-preservation.
Exactly.
You know those old music machines, the boom boxes? When you wanted to record, you'd press the red record button and it presses.
Yes.
Play, depress, pause. Can you come with a depressed button so I know you are on pause?
But it's because you won't understand when I'm on pause, when I need to pause.
I don't have to. I just need to see you're on pause. So I know, okay, this one is on pause. When she presses play, she'll leave.
So this is temporary.
Yeah.
I mean,
because that leads to the conflict of this person will not understand. They'll see this person came and we agreed on the pay and we agreed on the working hours and the terms. And then suddenly they are saying they are leaving.
Right.
And they're leaving because, you know, and when you look at what they're leaving to a higher paying job or something else. And you're wondering, but you know, it's not that we had that conversation.
But the workplace is also shifting. It's not, the shift is not only happening on one side, right? A lot more things are now contractual, shorter terms. So it could be it could be something that's happening because of how Gen Z are moving, or it's just what the job market needs right now. And it's the way we're skilling ourselves as well, and the way things are changing. So things are not as like they used to be. So maybe that's the question. Should you change in tandem, or just have honest conversations about what are you looking for in this role? And that's not something that will have you be penalized when you say, I'm looking for a short-term assignment, I'm looking for this and that. But I wanted to speak to privilege. The conversations we're having here are very much privileged. When you think of the ability to leave one job for another, there's people, young people across the continent, in Kenya, everywhere, who have not gotten that first job. And they're just, if I got that first job, I would treat it like my baby, because it's literally a lifeline. How do we have these conversations about, you know, boundaries and the workplace and all of these, when for so many young people and for so many Gen Z, it's just not a reality. They just want to get to the job, not so much even figure out if the workspace is healthy or not.
I think one of the things I would say about that is a lot of workspaces, it would help if they rethink certain qualifications, because one thing that I've seen, which is so sad, is there will be this person who they have exactly what it takes, but you want to penalize them because they didn't finish university. And again, one of the things about how we grew up is we are the tutorial generation. We learned skills from YouTube, from all these resources TikTok available, available to us. And so one of the things, which again I also touch on in the book, is from an employer's perspective, being able to give a shot to people based on what you know they can do and not what their papers say that they can do. And I think that if there is that leeway and grace for, okay, you might not have gone to film school, but you're an amazing cinematographer and you can get this job done based on your work that I've seen, give that person a shot rather than saying, you know what, this other guy, he has a whole degree in this. And I think that is something that is sometimes really hard to, like, you look at qualifications and this is someone who is extremely qualified, but because they didn't tick a certain box, they then miss out on certain opportunities. So I think from the employer perspective, it would be nice to take more merit from what you actually can see can be done and not just based on the promises on the paper of what can be done.
Right.
Yeah.
But then finally speak to young people
Yeah.
who may be feeling out of sorts and a little bit hopeless because of the rate of unemployment on the
Yeah.
continent, in this country, in Nigeria, all across.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a really tough space. I will say, even for me and for a lot of friends, it's not easy getting jobs in this world. And fortunately or unfortunately, that's why we have such a deep heart for hustle. And I think it would also be nice if, because sometimes I see where, like, there's someone who is really good as a freelancer, and I'm like, certain organizations could benefit from this. And I actually wish that there could be a world where the hustle that you're good at can give you merit and take you into rooms that you could have never imagined being in. Yeah.
Where is this book available?
So it's available on my website, crackingthegenzcode.com, and it's available globally.
Right.
Yeah.
Do Gen Z read?
Yes.
100%. Yes.
Books.
Yes.
Do they like read like hard copy books?
We do read books.
If you download it online.
Yes. What is on your
On Cracking the Gen Z Code.
We have
a fixer called Vayo who said, "Where you brought Gen Zs to roast millennials, guys."
No, I feel like they were allies.
Yeah.
I'm hearing
This is not a roast.
yeah, it's not a roast at all.
Yeah.
But guys, before we
Did you react like that, millennial?
I know, so defensive. Because I don't feel like it's roast.
we're about to get
culture.
into your world, guys. But thank you so much, Funmi. Thank you so much for
Thank
making
you.
time for us. Before we get into your world matters, we have to give our flowers to an amazing woman who's in studio with us, Janet Mbogwa, who has been nominated for the 50 most influential women in Kenya 2025.
Hey.
She absolutely is. Founder Inua Dada, also 1/3 of Fixing the Nation.
Yes.
Hey,
Oh my,
look at her.
Look at that.
Oh,
Hey.
What? Thank you, guys.
well done, Jano.
That's so kind.
Keep up the good
I'm so
work.
poor at processing. I need to learn to show emotion.
Yeah. Millennials.
I think it's because I'm transitioning and recalibrating. So
Right.
I'm so grateful, but then I'm also aware that I'm recalibrating a lot in my life. So I just look like, thanks.
No.
I'm grateful, just transitioning.
Yeah.
Thank you guys
Well
for being an
enjoyed.
awesome team. Yeah, thank you.
Well
thank
done,
you, Nation
Jano.
family.
No, bringing the dad energy. 50. Sasa tunataka work on list ya 25.
Yes, 25 most influential.
50 ni mengi
Yeah,
sana.
so 50 sasa unaweza kuja kwa list ya 25 alafu top 10.
Sawa. Sawa pa.
But you're phenomenal, Janet.
Thanks, Mariam.
Thank
As are
you
you.
so much for
As
the
are
work
you.
that you're
As are
doing.
you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Tupatane
New weekend.
kesho. New weekend.
Just like that.
We're leaving for your world, guys. Hiya. Bye. New weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Your world is coming up. Please do continue watching NTV and listening to Nation FM. Claudia Naisaba and Brian Aseli are there on the Vibe Shift. Thank you, Funmi. Thank you so much to our guest today, Kwaherini.